Hello and welcome to the 2024 ASCLD Emerging Issues webinar series in collaboration with the FTCOE. Today we will hear from multiple subject matter experts on an inside perspective to implementing standards on the OSAC Registry. Without further delay, I will turn things over to our presenters.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us in this webinar. We're very delighted to have an opportunity to talk with three different laboratory representatives who can talk to us about their quality system and how they started and completed the process of filling out declaration forms to demonstrate the implementation of standards on the OSAC registry. And the purpose of this webinar today is to help the uninitiated or those who are just beginning the process to discover what it's like to go through the process and what the steps are in order to achieve it, what the benefits are, what the challenges are, what are the tools that they used, what are the steps they take, and who are the champions in their organization necessary in order to be successful. So without further ado, I would like to begin with questioning each of the, first introducing and then questioning each of the three panelists that we have. The first that we have is Charles Ken Williams, who is known as Ken and is the Associate Deputy Director for the New Jersey State Police Office of Forensic Sciences. And I will let him tell you what he does. The second is Eva King, and Eva is with the Wisconsin State Crime Laboratory system. And Ken has 5 facilities that he oversees. Eva has 3 that are, she's the quality director for the Quality Assurance Bureau in Wisconsin. And the third is Michael Kessler. Michael is our non-traditional rock star. He operates in a laboratory which he says, don't call us a laboratory. We're a police department and we have a forensic science division. And they focus on some of the more non-traditional disciplines that brought him to the place where he is now with his quality system and having completed the declaration form and notifying us of standards that have been implemented in the disciplines in the police department forensic science division. So as we go along, I'd like to ask each of the 3 individuals to give a brief introduction, and then we'll start with the first question. Eva, can we start with you?
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Eva Marie Lewis King. I am the Quality Assurance Director at the Wisconsin State Crime Laboratories for the Quality Assurance Bureau. We have 3 laboratories here at the Wisconsin State Crime Laboratory, Madison, Milwaukee, and Wausau. And my team, I have a deputy director and a team of technical leaders and quality specialists that work in the Quality Assurance Bureau with me.
Okay, thanks, Eva. Ken?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. It's a good thing I can't see all of your pictures because we have over 100 participants, and that would make me pretty nervous. So since I can't see you, I can speak freely. But as Mark mentioned, I am part of a laboratory system. We have 5 laboratories within our system. We have 4 regional laboratories and a DNA laboratory. 2 of our regional laboratories only conduct toxicology and drug analysis. We have 1 regional laboratory that conducts toxicology analysis, drug analysis, and also fire debris analysis. And our central laboratory is a full service laboratory which conducts toxicology, drugs, trace evidence, and forensic serology. And as I mentioned, we have our DNA laboratory. I am the admin manager, so I work with all of the quality control coordinators and the discipline coordinators just to make sure we are ensuring quality for our entire system. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Ken. And Mike?
Good afternoon. Mark stole my thunder. I was going to make that declaration later, but he gave you a sneak peek into where we're at. So I'm the forensics manager for the Denton Police Department. We're a a large, small police department, approximately 220 sworn. I oversee the forensics division, which includes forensic services unit, digital forensics unit, and the evidence management unit. The declarations are largely on the forensic services unit side. So we do the traditional scene response, fingerprint identification, examination, as well as some ballistics triage. So we also have a unique construct here because we have a forensic science commission here in Texas, but I'll get into a little bit of that later. My background is I have about 20 years in forensic intelligence and forensic investigation with some law enforcement time, as well as academic and operational time in the intelligence field.
Okay, thank you. And my colleague in asking the questions today is Vincent Desiderio. He is a forensic scientist with the National Institute of Standards and Technology, Office of the OSAC Program Office. And Vinny, I'll let you introduce yourself, and then I'll give a few words in introducing myself.
In lieu of introducing myself, I just want to thank everybody for attending out there. We have over 100 attendees on here, and I'm really glad to see that. The information that you're going to be presented with really should help you with your implementation journey. So we're glad you can join us today. And really a special thanks to our panelists. And one thing that I do want to note before we jump in is if you have questions as we go along, that's really the purpose of this. You're going to hear some excellent advice, but also we'd like to hear your concerns, and maybe as a group we can answer some of those concerns that you have or any questions. So there is the Q&A function on there, and we'd love to hear from you and then get some of that discussion going. Mark, I'll turn it back to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vinny. And I would like to echo Vinny's remarks. We have three excellent experts with experience in navigating the journey through standards implementation. And I'm looking forward to asking those questions. The only thing that I wanted to say is that I am actually a contractor consulting with OSAC, having been around as a NIST member from the beginning of OSAC, and they haven't kicked me out yet. So as long as I can continue to make a contribution and find my way to NIST, I guess I'll continue having the opportunity to meet with you. The only other thing I wanted to mention is that this is a step-by-step process for all of you who have tuned in, 122 now. And we understand that it's a daunting task from someone who has not yet submitted the declaration form and received a certificate recognizing the implementation status that they have shared with us. And the title of this seminar is "We Did It, You Can Too," is really what we're trying to emphasize, is that this is doable. So we look forward over the rest of the course of this webinar to having you hear how these three folks did it and to answer any questions that you have. So I'd like to begin by asking some questions of the panelists. And we'll begin by recognizing that each of your labs came to the implementation process from somewhat different perspectives. So we're glad that you're willing to participate in this discussion and share your experiences with the audience members today. Starting with Eva, could each of you provide a little background on your implementation experience, including what gave you the incentive to start implementation, when you initiated your process, and generally, how difficult was the process overall? Eva?
Right. We were introduced to the OSAC standards implementation process as an organization initially through an internal communication that I provided everyone as a result of attending the fall 2014 Association of Forensic Quality Assurance Managers, AFQAM, training conference in Vancouver, British Columbia. There, I filled in for our quality assurance coordinator at the time, where then director, now contractor, OSAC Affairs, Mark Stallero, presented on the federal level's forensic science realignment to strengthen the nation's use of forensic science. Mark spoke of administering the OSAC. Director Stallero at the time informed about the OSAC structure and respective OSAC roles that included the FSSB, or the Forensic Science Standards Board's role in managing the OSAC Registry of approved standards and guidelines, approving standards, setting rules, and establishing priorities for the OSAC. I was a DNA supervisor at the time, and just a bit later, I saw Mark at the Midwest Association of Forensic Scientists meeting, providing an update on OSAC. I was excited. So you fast forward about 5 years or so, and I actually became the Quality Assurance Director of a newly formed Quality Assurance Bureau here at the Wisconsin State Crime Laboratories under the direct leadership of Crime Laboratory Bureau Director Nicole Ream, who eventually became the division administrator about a year or two later due to restructuring partially as a result of the 2009 NAS report strengthening forensic science in the United States, A Path Forward. Now, with recommendation from that same paper, director, or by this time, Division Administrator Ream, she encouraged participation in national forensic science standards development and working groups. And under her leadership, our Deputy Division Administrator, Jennifer Nagel, she was a member of national committees for forensic science policy and national advocacy. As a Quality Assurance Director, I remembered Mark and his impactful presentations, and I contacted him through NIST, where he truly encouraged and guided me forward on our desire to become a part of the OSAC standards implementation and standards development process. We first declared in 2021 with 3 DNA standards and a digital and multimedia terminology standard. Yeah, I believe. So it was a very easy process as I worked with the technical subject experts or our technical leaders here in Wisconsin who were encouraged to review the OSAC registry, look to see what we aligned with at the time, and use the declaration form that was on the OSAC website to begin the process of declaring and the implementation of OSAC standards. So this was a long process for us, a slow process for us to start our journey with standards implementation, but we were able to get out the gate. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm going to jump to Mike. And Mike, if you could please share with the audience how you initiated the experience and generally how difficult the process was overall.
Sure. So I came in with a little different view. I've been involved with OSAC since 2016 when the Crime Scene Investigation Subcommittee was created. As I've moved up through those roles, I'm actually now the chair of the Scene Examination SAC and sit on the FSSB. So 3 years ago when I came into this position, I was very much aware of standards in forensics and how they were coming about and how they were still controversial. But it was an easy implementation for me because I, fortunately or unfortunately, depending how you look at it, came into an organization. The division was newly created. 3 units that had never been together had been put together, and there was no SOPs. When I asked for the SOPs when I came in, I was handed a manual on how to use our local APHIS system. So it gave me a blank slate to work from, which is great. And the standards help with that foundation, right? If we can do everything that we can to be meeting best practices or standards, it's going to really push us further. Personally, I see, if you look at law enforcement, again, I don't distance myself from being a scientist, but I also distance myself from being a lab. We're not a full lab, we're not accredited, but we still need to be doing science properly as we're implementing it. And in the law enforcement circles, you hear a lot about police legitimacy. I look at implementing standards as a matter of forensic legitimacy. If we can't show that what we're doing is of quality and up to snuff, we probably shouldn't be doing that. And I know in the law enforcement circles, sometimes that's very hard because we're not being resourced, but the standards that we're implementing, and we're implementing incrementally. We're not implementing all the ones that we can right away, and there's ones that we're going to still continue to work towards. But it has helped with getting funding and getting additional positions. I was actually, the digital forensics unit didn't exist when I came here. The folks that were doing crime scene investigations were tasked with that as well. So I was able to help professionalize the division and really grow what we were doing here. And again, kind of like Eva mentioned, during the implementation, it's not a push onto the people, but you bring them in and you collaboratively work with them to build the structure to be able to meet those standards.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Ken, New Jersey is a large state system. You're the biggest on our panel today. How did you initiate your process, and how did you find the process overall?
Well, like Eva, our incentive came as the result of a presentation. We were fortunate to have a presentation provided by Mark and Vinny when they came here for one of our in-service trainings in the summer. And let me tell you, that presentation had everyone on the edge of their seats. Unfortunately, it was the edge of their seats trying to get out of the room, but they did stay and they listened and they heard all that Vinny and Mark had to say about standards. And I can certainly appreciate their passion, and so did my group. As a result of that, we were able to meet as a group of lab directors. We all recognize the importance of standards, but by hearing that presentation and just hearing the passion that Vinny and Mark brought to standards, not only implementation, but that declaration process, we decided to move forward. The good thing also with having that presentation, I saw it kind of like attending a regional or national forensic science meeting. When you come back after a meeting, you're just so excited and you just want to push forward and do everything. You have that momentum. Kind of like if you register for the American Academy meeting, February 19th through 24th in Scenic, Denver, Colorado. That's my plug. You come back with that passion, that momentum, and you just want to get things done. So we were able to take advantage of that. When we met as a group of lab directors in July, we decided to move forward with the declaration process. I reached out to the discipline coordinators and also the DNA laboratory technical leader to let them know that we were going to declare. And as a result of the newsletter that came out to inform us about the open enrollment period and the fact that if you declared by September 1st, you could get recognized and posted on the website with all the other laboratories that also started that process. So after notifying the discipline coordinators and the technical leaders on August 2nd, I sent them an email, let them know what the purpose was and the plan in which I wanted to get it done. I told them I wanted their responses submitted to me by August 21st. So that gave them just under 3 weeks to get it done. I know it was an aggressive timeline, but they did what they needed to do. They reviewed their manuals, they reviewed the standards that I sent to them, and we were able to submit our declaration on September 1st. And because of that, we were able to receive our certificate during National Forensic Science Week, which is something we were very proud of because we could then announce it to the public during National Forensic Science Week as something that we are doing to demonstrate our commitment to quality and the fact that we want to ensure that standards are being adhered to. And so that was our process. It was an aggressive timeline, but thanks to the help of everyone, like Mike mentioned, bringing everyone in, we were able to get it done.
Great. Thanks, Ken. I'd like to turn it over to Vinny now.
All right, thanks, Mark. The next question, formal question, is going to be for Eva, but before that, I just wanted to ask a follow-up question to Michael. You brought up a really excellent point about how you can implement without being accredited. Do you see implementation as a logical stepping stone to accreditation, especially in a non-traditional environment?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of the free version of accreditation, and I'll probably get lots of emails on that, with the disclaimer of that it is not an accreditation, but it definitely puts you on that right pathway to where you need to be. And again, most limitations for places not getting accredited, it's going to be financial and it's going to be personnel. And you can help, like I said, use the standards as the guide and the justification as you look to incrementally grow and professionalize your organization. It's not something that has to happen all at once, where every potential standard that would impact your work groups needs to be implemented right away. You can do it incrementally. I was actually yesterday just looking at the newest list and what ones we can work towards next. So it's definitely an ongoing process where, especially in my non-traditional role where we're not accredited, so we don't have all the pieces in place. I'm the forensics manager, the quality manager, the supervisor. I'm all those pieces. But as I look forward with my strategic plan, we're looking to grow into all of that.
Right. Excellent information. Thank you, Michael. All right, Eva, your lab system has been a tremendous supporter of OSAC for several years now and has been implementing OSAC Registry standards for some time. Have there been any significant benefits or unexpected but pleasant surprises within your system that have resulted from implementation? And if so, can you take a few moments to discuss?
Absolutely. Here in Wisconsin, we have some wonderful OSAC, or what I like to call OSAC champions. We have some of our technical leaders who have participated in various groups with the OSAC. And I'd like to definitely mention some of them at least. Aaron Matson, he worked on part of the Vital photography group, and he was definitely someone who encouraged our group of technical leaders when we got together with the Quality Assurance Bureau to move forward with standards implementation. In fact, he was one of the first to actually implement a standard back in 2021. And Carly Huget also, she was an OSAC affiliate at the time when she first implemented. And so my task of attempting to jump on the bandwagon of being an OSAC champion was made so much more easier having these individuals who were participants of OSAC and helped to not only implement standards, but also assist in the development of those standards. And so with that, we had other technical leaders here. At the time, Gretchen de Groot and Amber Rasmussen came on board, and there were some DNA standards that were implemented, and Sandy Korsh assisted with controlled substances as well. And we implemented those standards. But the biggest part of and benefit that we saw in this process was simply the camaraderie of the staff coming together. And it wasn't limited to just the technical subject experts. Each of the technical leaders went forth with their particular groups, their disciplines, and presented in their various ways the OSAC standards and the tools available. And with that, the entire group of operations staff was able to, in the respective disciplines that were looking at the standards, were able to come together, and past efforts by technical leaders to attempt to get buy-in actually became an easier process with everyone looking at the standards. So that definitely was a benefit that allowed for group discussion, I should say good group discussion on not only how we met the standards, but actually why we were doing certain things. And so this opportunity to just discuss everything truly leads to a quality improvement.
All right, thank you, Eva. Ken, you recently went through the implementation process, as you mentioned, across 5 laboratories in your system during the OSAC open enrollment period last summer. We have another open enrollment period coming this summer for all of those in attendance on this webinar. And I'm sure they're wondering, what challenges did you face? How did you surmount those challenges? And have you seen any short-term benefits so far?
For us, the biggest challenge was just timing, but that was a self-imposed pressure. Because as I mentioned, we started this process in early August, August 1st, and it was just that tight deadline to get it done within less than 3 weeks. And it was a lot to try to get accomplished, but we were able to do it. I know some may think it was a lot of pressure placed on the QA/QC coordinators and the technical leaders to do it. And there were quite a few back and forth emails. And I'd like to consider my Southern charm allowing us to get through that process and just encouraging the discipline coordinators that we could do it. And some of it was just guidance. I've seen the question come up in the chat a little bit about full implementation and partial implementation. That's the beauty of the declaration process. There are a number of standards listed, over 150. But when we looked at it as a system, really just a little over half were applicable to us, meaning they were in disciplines in which we perform work. So that broke it down just a little bit more. And we aren't able to indicate that we have full implementation of over half of them. And so we are able to indicate partial implementation for the standards that we use, just some of that particular standard. But what we will do is take a look at all of our manuals and all of our protocols to see what improvements can we make so we can move towards full implementation. During the declaration process, that's all they're asking you to do. Just take a look at the standards. Is it full implementation, partial implementation? Will you not implement at all? And as Mark and Benny mentioned when they talked to us, if you just go through and you declare for just one standard, you are a declarer. I challenge my staff to do a little bit better than that. And so they looked through all the standards and they looked through all their manuals and they were able to indicate the status. As far as the benefits, that's something that I am looking forward to, because now our coordinators are looking at their manuals with an eye towards the standard. And so we will see the ways in which we can move towards that full implementation. It will require that we review our manuals on a more consistent basis as required by our accreditation requirements. We will continue to do that, but we'll look at the standards to see what we need to implement more effectively.
Okay.
And if
Thanks,
I could
Ken.
just, oh, sorry,
Go
Mark,
ahead,
if I
Mike.
could just kind of expound on Ken's comments. I think there might be a little bit of confusion of what partial implementation actually is. So partial implementation, when you declare that on the form, does not mean I'm not going to implement these 10, 15, how many ever standards. It means this one standard here, I'm not going to do all the pieces. And it may be something, if you look at most standards, almost every standard, there's a little cutout at the beginning that says, if you know, this is what's recommended, but if you have a reason that's justifiable that you can't do this, you can't afford a piece of equipment or something like that. Obviously, not something critical within that where it would cause issues with results, things like that. You can partially implement and grow towards that full standard implementation. Yes, when you implement one standard, you get a certificate, but it's also logged and tracked as to how those are implemented, what you've implemented. But also here in the state of Texas, we actually, with the Forensic Science Commission, will go on and declare our declarations as well as to what we've implemented. So it's a little better tracked and publicly available. Thank you.
Well, Michael, we're going to stick with you at the moment. And just to let you know, there is a question in the chat box. It's acknowledged, and we'll get to that when we get to the open discussion point in a little bit here. We're just going to proceed with the questions as planned for the moment. So, Michael, as what can be termed a non-traditional implementer operating in an environment outside of your typical forensic laboratory, you are somewhat of a pioneer with respect to implementation. To this end, you surely face some challenges. What specific challenges did you face, and how did you navigate those challenges to essentially sell implementation to your agency?
Sure. As I kind of pointed out before, as a pioneer, right, you're going to potentially suffer some attacks, but being able to bring the standard forward, my agency is a best practices agency. We're lucky that the last two chiefs have been very supportive of what we're trying to do. But of course, there's been plenty of requests that have gone unfulfilled, and you can't let that dissuade you from looking to implement. Again, you can partially implement If there's something where you just don't have the ability, whether it's staffing or something like that, and you make it known that you're not able to fulfill that piece, it's better than not implementing anything and not having that base, but also acknowledging that you're going to work towards it. Being open about the process. That declaration I feel is also very open to anyone, right? Anyone can go to the website and see who's declared and be able to get that public information. I'm very much about openness, transparency, as is my agency, as we look to better our forensics work. Before I came here, and actually the first little bit that I came here, there was a lot of issues, but we went through and did non-conformance investigations, looking at those issues and correcting those issues where we can, and being able to have those standards help with that is a lot. I had pushback from my people, right? And being involved with OSAC for so long, I've heard a lot of it before, right? You can't tell me what to do. Correct. OSAC can't tell you what to do, and I can't tell you what to do at your agency, but I can recommend that you implement and be able to put the value behind it, right? This is, like I said before, forensic legitimacy. This is the start, if you are partially implementing, of an insurance policy, right? Quality costs money, but wrongful convictions and lawsuits and things like that cost a whole lot more money. So being able to articulate that to leadership and to your people is better. And it also, when you build quality, right, you're going to be adding more documentation, you're going to need more people, and your employees like to hear that you're bringing more people. So as you can bring that with it and involve them in the process, it takes down a lot of those barriers.
That's great.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask, did any of you find that the registry standards were in close alignment with your SOPs? I realize that every forensic science service provider has different SOPs. You write your own SOPs. But the question is whether or not they were in close alignment with your SOPs as you began. And if not, what was the extent of necessary changes? Did you take measures to align your SOPs with those standards? Any of you can answer this question.
I can hop in on that first, if you don't mind. When we first began our standards implementation, one of the first things that we did was to actually see what we aligned with in our operations manual with the OSAC standards. And given that many of our SOPs relied on standards that already existed, ASTM, as well as other standards developing organizations, standards that were out there, and the OSAC hadn't implemented many of those standards as well. We found that we did align with many of them, and we were able to declare based on that. However, in the process of implementing standards, there are many standards that were put forth with best practices that we did find here in Wisconsin that we could improve our processes. And in toxicology and latent print, footwear, our technical leaders and their group of the group of analysts working with them were able to look through those standards and actually work to align our procedures with what was put forth in the standards. So we were able to see where we actually aligned and also improve from the standards that were on the OSAC registry.
Eva, thanks very much. Vinny, I'll turn it over to you.
Let's see if anybody else wanted to jump in on that one as well. Michael or Ken?
I'll just add quickly that there's a key distinction to be made here, and that's in an implementer versus a declarer. Many of you that are joining in with us today probably are already implementers, and many of the protocols that you utilize, I know we are in that position. As Eva mentioned, we have a trace evidence unit, so many of our analysts were looking at the ASTM standards, and so they've already written them into their protocol. This process that we began last summer was really just the declaration process to see what we've already implemented. So we took a look at our manuals, compared it to the standards that were listed, and able to start and complete that declaration process within that 3-week period. Not really the implementation, because that had already started many years before.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. Michael, anything to add?
No, like I said, coming in, it was blank slate, so it was easy to implement. Also, I've been involved with the process of creating many of the standards for crime scene because none existed. So I was very much involved in the creation, and they were in line with the best practices, and I was leading much of that. So it was very easy for me to create my SOPs to line up.
All right, thank you, Michael. All right, so this has been touched upon a little bit here or there, but maybe we can get the group to expand upon it a little bit. At first glance, with over 170 standards listed, implementation of OSAC Registry standards looks to be an overwhelming task. Keeping in mind that it isn't an all or nothing process, could you each discuss your strategy for the best step-by-step approach to digesting this task?
I'll go first. For me, it was easy to pick the low-hanging fruit, right? What are the easier ones that I can implement and use that as a guide, but also be looking forward to the additional standards that we would look to implement and then declare as well. It's easier with the resources that OSAC has in cooperation with ASB, being able to understand and digest the standards. Sometimes the language can be difficult or potentially interpreted in a couple ways. So it's good to be able to have those resources. And again, partially implementing a standard that we look to fully implement, I don't see that as a bad thing. I see that as a growth map where we intend to be in the future. To me, I see it as irresponsible to not be putting that pathway forward as a non-accredited lab. I don't see myself as a lab. We do have a lab facility, but again, we're not accredited. We're not doing the work, especially here in Texas. It's very well regulated. But I believe that we should get to the standard where we are accredited or accreditable, at least. Accreditation, as you know, costs a good bit of money. But like we said before, being able to publicly declare the standards that you're implementing is a step on that path. Again, there's no audits and things like that. It is a self-declaration. The audits and things like that are going to come in court. When you say you've implemented X and you see your process, you see your bench notes, and it's not being implemented, that's where the check comes in. So it's not fully accreditation, but it's definitely on that path.
Okay.
Here in Wisconsin, our approach truly was to have, because there are so many standards now. When we started, I believe there were 21 or 23. Now there are over 170 standards. Our approach was to really have the subject matter experts keep an eye on those standards that are applicable to them, because not every standard is applicable to every discipline. So with that, they are able to really bring that large number down to a few. I can remember a time where there were disciplines who were waiting for standards to get on the registry for their particular disciplines. And so part of that particular task of being overwhelming actually worked in our favor to kind of divide. I won't say conquer, because we're just dividing and working through at this particular time with the standards. And it's not as overwhelming as it may appear, because most of the standards that we have implemented, we were doing many of the things listed in the standards already.
For us, the biggest thing was, for me in particular, just to realize this is not something that I could do on my own. I had to get help from the QA/QC coordinators and the technical leaders And I was just more of a project manager in this effort. And it was really just to provide the timeline, give them the goal and the objectives that we needed to meet in order to meet that deadline. And so by giving it to them, asking them to review their manuals, since they were in the best position to determine whether or not a particular standard was implemented, since they are responsible for reviewing the manual, and in many instances, writing the manual, they would know exactly how far along they are in the process. And so getting their help, getting them to take a look at their manuals, report back to me with their thoughts. And if there was a question, we would discuss it. But that's what really helped us in this process, or helped me in particular, just getting help from the coordinators.
Thanks, President Williams. Sorry, I had to say that once. All right, Mark.
All right, thanks, Benny. Were any of you aware of or able to take advantage of any of the tools for standards implementation that are available on the OSAC website or other organizations like the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, checklists and fact sheets and training webinars to help you guide your organization through standards implementation process? And if so, could you share your impression of the value of these tools and any strategies that you might have developed to deploy them effectively?
Absolutely. We relied heavily on not only OSAC staff, NIST staff available to us, but the website as well. And that provided definitely the registry provided a wealth of information. And we also were introduced, we actually started attempting to put in our own checklist prior to another organization getting checklists out for the OSAC standards. And we found that these tools are definitely useful. In fact, we went through the experience of recognizing that the declaration forms update often. And so keeping an eye on the updates with the on the website that include additions to the registry and even information on standards that are currently in development helps to keep our units up to date on what's happening and what's going on. So the website is a great tool.
Okay, and for those of you who are watching your chat, Vinny just added the additional links for checklists and fact sheets that can be found, plus other resources. So please have a look at your chat if you're interested in finding them in the link. And those links are hot links, so it'll open it up directly for you. Vinny?
So I don't know if anybody else had anything to add to that question as well regarding the tools.
So I too used the checklist. It's definitely a great tool, even not just for myself, for my staff to be able to, see those benchmarks that they need to hit, and also towards planning, like I said, when we're doing partial implementation, for knowing where we need to be, and it very much helps align with creation of standards, modification of your standards during that review period annually. So the constantly being like Eva said, they're constantly being updated with new standards to be able to support anyone looking to implement.
Right. Vinny, there's one thing before the next question I wanted to clarify, and there seems to be sort of a clarification that might be helpful for folks who have not yet gone through this process. And that is, the declaration form is just a snapshot in time. It's going to change because quality is a dynamic, constant process that goes on and on and on and on and on. You never come to the end of improving your quality system. You never come to the end of declaring standards that you've implemented. You start partially for some, fully for some, but it's only a snapshot in time. And as time goes on, the status in your laboratory with how many standards are being implemented constantly undergoes change. So it's not a static process. And if someone says, well, what about the declaration form that I sent you last year? That was last year. We know you've moved on. We're not the implementation police. It's self-adoption, self-declaring. It's so that you have a system through which you can manage your process. So I just felt that that might have needed clarification. And Ken, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, I just raised my hand because I have a real life scenario that applies to what you just said. Just within the past 2 weeks, I received a discovery request for review, where in that request, they mentioned or referenced an ASB standard for best practice recommendation for photographing evidence. Well, when I saw that standard listed in the discovery request and that it was an ASB standard, I immediately took a look at our declaration form to see if we had fully implemented that standard or partially. And much to my surprise, that standard was not listed from the time that we performed the declaration process. So I went to the ASB website, I pulled the checklist down, and I sent that information to our trace coordinator. I made her aware of the fact that it was mentioned in a discovery request. I showed her the checklist and let her know I would like for her to take a look at this to see what we need to do to implement the standard, place it in our manuals so that that becomes part of our continual improvement process. So it really just echoes what many of you just mentioned with this whole standards declaration process.
Yeah, it's an incredible example. Ken, thank you for sharing that with us. This is going to be the last formal question, and then we'll get to the question and answer in the box, and then we'll do just a quick summation and closing. So one of the fears that many non-implementers have expressed is the potential for challenges in court. Is this something that you considered during your implementation journey, and have you conducted or considered training your staff to better prepare them to answer questions about standards implementation? And this kind of actually leads into the question that's sitting in the Q&A box right now. So I'm going to throw it out to the group, and if anybody wants to jump on that one, don't all jump at once.
No, I can go in with that.
I was going to go last so I could jump into the question in the box.
Okay, perfect.
Wonderful. Staff often have concerns about challenges in court, of course. And when you have the addition of the expectation of a particular standard that they will be questioned on, one of the things that we like to do is encourage staff to stand firm, stand on that for which you do, and explain that clearly in court. Now, with the expectations that are put forth, the requirements that are put forth in the standards, and one of the wonderful things about the OSAC process, as well as our work here in Wisconsin, led by our management team here, is that the OSAC process included so many different stakeholders. Not only did it include forensic practitioners, but managers were also included, as well as law enforcement, judges, lawyers, and I don't mean just prosecutors, but also defense attorneys as well. So everyone being a part of this process from the start of OSAC, seeing Mark come out early on in the process, explaining to everyone what was happening, the participation of different stakeholders, even on the OSAC as well as members of the SSB, and just knowing that everyone is included in this process, and knowing how we are going about declaring implementation and even standards development makes the process so much easier to explain, because there's understanding within the system from practically everyone, from defense attorneys to judges to forensic practitioners. Now, I didn't address the fact that we do plan to continue to work with our staff with testimony training. We've found in not only this process, but other quality processes that allows us opportunity to see that we do need to continue forward with process improvement in assisting staff with courtroom testimony, regardless of the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. Before we get to Michael, Ken, do you have anything to add?
No, I see we're getting short on time, so we will allow Michael to jump in and we can take a look at the questions in the Q&A if you don't mind.
Yeah, let's do that. Thanks, Ken.
So as far as considering legal matters in court, we here in Texas, again, I've talked about the Forensic Science Commission, and we are not an accredited lab. We're not required to be accredited in any of the disciplines that we practice. But it is something that I do train my people on to make sure that they understand in case they do get those challenges in court, so that they can articulate exactly what the administrative law that governs our forensic laboratories here in Texas. As you look at the, again, right, partial implementation, what are you not doing? What are you doing? Again, being able to articulate a reasonable reason that you're not doing a certain piece, and being able to hopefully articulate why it doesn't fully impact your results. If you're leaving out parts that are very impactful in a method, don't quote me as saying you can partially implement that. But as we look towards the question in the chat, it's asking about if a complaint is received as far as us not following a standard that we have declared we've implemented, what would the interpretation of the standard be versus my interpretation, and how would we settle disputes between two experts? I think the good thing is with the checklist, the standards, there's not a lot of wiggle room in whether you're meeting it or not. If it was something that came up in court, obviously it would be something that my examiner would have to articulate why they did what they did. And if it's something that came to my attention, I would investigate it like any other non-conformance, being able to look at what exactly happened. Was it an interpretation issue? Are we doing it wrong? And being able to improve our processes from there. We've not had any issues with that, but there's always the potential, so we always try to plan for that.
Michael, thank you for addressing that. I'm just going to address Julia's question really quick because I'm pretty excited about this. This is my area of responsibility here at NIST. So she's asking about, what do you do if there's changes? Do you submit a new declaration form? And then, like, when would you do that? So I do want to say that we had an open enrollment period, and I don't know if Ken wants to jump in real quick on top of this. That ran last year from July through September, mid-July through September. We are going to do that again. And that's an excellent time to kind of reevaluate things on a cadence, take a look at how things have changed on a declaration form, and then submit an updated declaration form. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but we do have some developments coming forward for all the implementers out there. And whether you're coming on board or you're an established implementer, that will make the process much easier for you. I don't want to spill the beans on that yet. We're going to have some communications coming out. And then before we get to the closing statements, I just want to thank, on behalf of the Special Programs Office here in this, all of our panelists. I'd really like to thank all of the attendees for joining as well. We hit, I think it was 140, well, it was 123. I think it topped out at about 140. So thank you for joining us today. And if you have any questions, our contact information is available. You can reach out to us. So Mark, do you want to take it to the closing?
Sure. I'd like to just ask everybody in a
Mark, before I say anything, Ken has his hand up. I mentioned his name and then I forgot to let him have a second.
That's all right. Ken?
I just wanted to jump in to also address Julia's question, because we are planning a process to take a look at the declaration form to make sure we are meeting not only the standards that we declared that we were in compliance with, but also those new standards that have been added, as Vinny mentioned and Mark talked about also, that is continually being updated. It was just a snapshot snapshot. So next month we have this meeting planned. I will speak with the coordinators to let them know that there is a declaration form out there now. I will forward the new form to them, and also information regarding the checklist, because last year was just phase one, and that was just to declare. Now we're going to take a look at all of those standards, especially those that we indicated partial implementation, to see what we need to do to now declare full implementation. It's a continual process. We will get there. And so we will rely on the checklist. We will continually update, and that will be done annually. And we will take advantage of that open enrollment period. That was something that I could latch on to, because I saw it just like the open enrollment period for medical plans. You choose now and you're good for the rest of the year. And so with that, that just provided the incentive that we needed to get this started, because we all have backlogs, we all have things to do, we have all these internal pressures. We would have continued to put it off. But because we had that, if you declare by September 1st, then this, that gave us a goal. And so we were able to reach that, and we'll continue to take advantage of the open enrollment period coming up, so that July 1st to September, so we can declare again with a new declaration form.
All right. Well, that's great advice. And I appreciate your response, Ken. We only have 3 minutes left. So in less than a minute, I'm going to ask each of you if you would give advice to forensic science service providers that are thinking about implementing standards on the OSAC registry and completing a declaration form. What would you tell them? Eva, let's start with you.
All right. Well, the wonderful thing about OSAC and the organization is that you don't have to operate in a silo. Not only do you get to work with everyone within your organization, but you also have the resources available to you, not only with OSAC NIST, but others who participate in the OSAC implementation process. So I would say that you're not in this alone, and there are others who are working to get on the same page with all the rest of us doing the same, to be on the same page across the nation. So.
All right. Mike?
So real briefly, I just encourage those non-traditional entities, law enforcement agencies of whatever level or size. I encourage you to join me as a pioneer. Take those initial hard steps to become in a alignment with standards, a quality system, to be able, again, to put that legitimacy behind the forensics that you're doing, regardless of which disciplines you're doing it for.
That's great. And Ken, bring us home.
My advice really is just to start that review process. If you are an accredited laboratory or an accredited institution, you are currently reviewing accreditation standards on an annual basis, where you're going through that checklist and making sure you comply with those standards. It's going to be much the same with this process. Take a look at the standards, take a look at your manuals, see which parts of those standards you meet. If it's full implementation, you're able to check that box. If it's partial, you check that box and just see what you need to do moving forward. But just don't be afraid. Rip off the Band-Aid, take a look, provide the guidance that is needed. Use that open enrollment date as a deadline so you can get it done, and just declare. That's my advice to you. Just declare.
Well, thank you. And Vinny and I would both like to thank Eva and Ken and Mike. Fabulous webinar. And we hope that the people who have attended this webinar will have found it useful. And you know where to find us. Our email addresses are in the chat. So thank you so much.
And just one last note, really thank you to ASCLD for this opportunity, and RTI for their support. And hopefully everybody has a wonderful day.
As you depart, we kindly ask that you take a minute or two to complete our post-event questionnaire. The link will be pasted in the chat and also appear as you exit the Zoom room. Your feedback helps us improve our outreach efforts and continue to provide the best experience possible. Thank you again for attending, and we hope everyone has a great day.